In the 19th century, Europe and America transformed themselves into connected economies. And one of the ways they did it was by building railroads. These were huge infrastructure projects which allowed for the mass transit of people and commodities. They were funded by governments and by private enterprises because they realized that to make a thing in volume, you needed to get people to the place where the things are made. And once you've made all those things, you need to get them back out to the consumer. Otherwise, no point making them. Nations which invested in their transit infrastructure became industrialized powerhouses. The King of Mauritania said, no, we don't need these new railroads. We have a perfectly good network of caravan tracks. Name a Mauritanian company. But the commodity which defined the late part of the 20th century, and which is already defining the 21st, is information. This is the digital era. And just like people and commodities, to move efficiently, information needs a transit network. One of the 2007 election promises of the Rudd government was to build such a network. It was a nation-building promise, of nation-building ambitions, and so they gave it an appropriate nation-building sounding name, the National Broadband Network. It's a huge project, and in Australia it has become traditional to calibrate the hugeness of new projects by equating them to the Snowy River Hydro Scheme. The Snowy River Hydro Scheme cost $820 million. In today's money, that's about $15 billion. They put Australia on a global stage saying, we are Australia and we can do big things. The National Broadband Network is going to cost anything up to $43 billion. That's 3 snowy hydros. So what is the National Broadband Network and why is it so very expensive? The plan is to connect Australian homes and businesses with one of these, a brand new fibre optic cable. At the moment, most homes and businesses in Australia are already connected with one of these, a telephone line. Now, strip one of these down, and you get this, copper. Some magical things have been done with copper. Many people already have a fast internet connection at home using a plain old copper telephone line, just like this one. And it's perfectly good for Skyping with Gran, or for watching The Wire on ABC iView. But if you want to do much, much more with it, I'm talking about high-definition, three-dimensional, digital, interactive television type things, then this part of the connection, the last mile, represents a bottleneck, and you need to upgrade it. And in a nutshell, that's the objective of the National Broadband Network, to replace 90% of these last-mile connections with fibre, and thus remove the bottleneck. That means digging up the street and laying a brand new fibre optic connection into every home and business in Australia. Suddenly you can start to see where that $43 billion is going. But we're an entrepreneurial nation. We don't mind investing so long as we know we're going to get the money back. Sell me the business case. Well, this is it. The National Broadband Network is what's called an open access network. Any of the ISPs can use it. You buy an internet connection from your internet service provider, and your internet service provider rents the connection into your home from the National Broadband Network. Over time, the National Broadband Network pays some of that value back to you, the taxpayer, to increase domestic productivity. So how many people do we need to sign up for this service to make the whole arrangement work? Well, the latest estimates are that between 60 and 80% need to sign up. That's 60 to 80% of everyone in Australia. Quite ambitious, really, especially when you consider the amount of competition. And potentially the largest competitor are these fellows. You see, Telstra already own that copper connection into your home, and they use it to retail you services. They also let other internet service providers use it, and they call that wholesale. Now, what the government doesn't want is for Telstra and the National Broadband Network to get into a fight over you, the consumer. Use the copper, says Telstra. No, follow the fibre, says the National Broadband Network. So the government have come up with a cunning scheme. They want to separate Telstra into 2 separate companies. One for retail and one for wholesale. And a possibility which flows from that is that the wholesale company will actually become part of the National Broadband Network, creating one publicly owned mother of all wholesale companies and potentially a level playing field for the ISPs to compete for your business. Of course, one way to make this whole thing a lot less risky is to spend less money. Could we make the National Broadband Network and still have change from $43 billion? Well, lots of people believe that we can. And one of the ways that we would do it is by using wireless. Wireless doesn't require a direct connection, which means less fibre, less holding up traffic, fewer roadworks, and a smaller bill. And it also means greater mobility. And to be fair, the National Broadband Network already plans to use wireless in remote and regional areas where laying fibre is too expensive. But what about wireless in dense metropolitan areas like this? Well, wireless has its limitations. There are questions about its speed, and there are also questions about the cost of upgrading the equipment. Whilst wireless might be cheaper now, in the long run it could turn out to be even more expensive than fibre. So, as you can see, there are a swag of big questions here. Political, financial, philosophical even. Will a national programme to upgrade our communications infrastructure and prepare us for the 21st century benefit Australia? Few people dispute that. But how best to do it so that it is fit for purpose? And how, in doing so, do we make sure we don't saddle our future generations with a mountain of debt? Join us here at Business 21C as we follow the debate.